Mhm.
Hi everyone, welcome to Straight Up Talks hosted by Ujjivan Small Finance Bank. Today we are honored to have two very accomplished gentlemen who have had decades of rich professional experience from across the globe and industries. We have Mr. Prasenjit Bhattacharya, CEO of Great Place to Work
Mhm.
Institute India, everyone. And Mr.
Welcome to
Sanjay Kao,
Straight
Head
Up
of HR
Talks
Ujjivan
hosted
Small
by
Finance
Ujjivan Small
Bank
Finance
Limited.
Bank.
Both these
Today we are honored to
organizations have
have
an
two very
association that
accomplished gentlemen
dates
who have
back to
had
11
decades
years.
of rich professional
Ujjivan's
experience from
mission is to
across the
build
globe
better
and
lives,
industries.
and
We
Great
have
Place
Mr.
to Work
Prasenjit
Institute's mission
Bhattacharya,
is to
CEO
build
of
a
Great Place
better
to Work
world
Institute
by
India.
Mhm.
helping
And
organizations.
welcome to
Sanjay Kao,
Straight
Head
Up
of
Talks
HR Ujjivan
hosted
Small
by Ujjivan
Finance
Small
Bank
Finance
Limited. That's
Bank.
how we feel that
Today we are honored to
organizations and
have two
associations
very
are
accomplished
characterized by
gentlemen
a
who have had
broad mission of
decades
building
of
better
rich
lives.
professional
Ujjivan,
experience
thank you
from
so much
across the globe
for
and
joining.
industries.
And shall we
We
get
have
started?
Mr. Prasenjit
Mission
Bhattacharya,
Sure.
is to
CEO
build
of
a
Great Place
better
to Work
world
Institute
by
India.
helping
And
organizations.
welcome to
Start
Straight
with
Up Talks
Ujjivan
hosted by
Small
Ujjivan
Finance
Small
Bank. We'd like
Finance
to
Bank.
hear from you more that
Today we
how
are honored to have two
organizations
very
are
accomplished
characterized by
gentlemen who
a
have had
broad mission of
decades of
building
rich
better lives.
professional
Ujjivan, thank
experience
you
from
so much
across the globe
better
and
joining.
industries.
And shall we
We
get
have
started?
Mr. Prasenjit
So I have
Bhattacharya,
to go
Is to
back
CEO
to the
build
of
a
Great
history
Place
of
better
to
this
Work
world
Institute
organization.
by
India.
helping
And welcome to
organizations. Start
Straight
with
Up Talks
Start
hosted
with
by
Ujjivan
Ujjivan
Small
Small
We'd like
Finance
to
Finance
hear
Bank.
Bank.
from you more that
Today
how
we are honored to
Great
have
place
two
to work
very
institute was
accomplished
not
gentlemen
started
who have had
Ujjivan,
decades of rich
thank
professional
only
experience
years
from
ago.
across the globe
better
and
lives.
The
industries.
And shall we
genesis
We
get
is
have
that
started?
Mr. Prasenjit
Robert had
Bhattacharya,
to go
Is to
back
CEO
to the
build a
of
history of
better
this
world
organization. He
by
used to come
helping
and
up
welcome to
organizations. Start
Straight
with
Up
when I
Talks
was
Ujjivan
starting
hosted
my
by
journey
Ujjivan
in
Small
Hong
We'd like
Kong.
Finance
to hear
Bank.
from you more
Today
that
we
how
are
He was
honored to
Great
have
Place to
two
Work
very
Institute was
accomplished
not
characterized by
gentlemen who
a
have had decades of
mission
rich
that
professional
wanted to
experience
create a
from
Ujjivan, thank you
across
software
the
so
globe
much
and
and
industries.
Genesis went to a publisher with this bright idea. He said, I want to write a book called The 100 Worst Companies to Work for in America. And the publishers thought for a while. They said, people are going to read it. We don't doubt that. However, Bob, we don't have enough lawyers in our payroll to publish this book. These companies are going to file lawsuits against us. Then they turned the idea on its head and they said, where are the good companies in America? Can you tell us who are the best? So Robert Levering and his co-author went to hundreds of organizations and met thousands of employees, and there came a book called 100 Best Companies to Work for in America. Back in 19, when was that? 88. At around that time, remember, people were not talking about war for talent. It was pretty much still competitive strategy and business process reengineering and many other movements. So this is the first time that talent came at the center. Fortune magazine went to a Great Place to Work and said, can we do this every year? The January issue of Fortune magazine became the largest selling issue of Fortune magazine globally and continued for many years, #1 media tracker. To cut a long story short, we are now in more than 65 countries. The brand came to India in 2003, 2007. We set it up as a separate entity in India. Our vision for India was and continues to be to make India a great place to work for all. And in 2008, that was the first year that we got in touch with Ujjivan. And a very interesting thing I remember is that not only did Ujjivan call us to their organization, but your leaders like Samit and others took us to industry associations because Ujjivan with some others were trying to create an industry. It was not just trying to create a business. And that was the start of a journey. So therefore, if I were to say Ujjivan was created to be a great place to work. It was not as if you struggled and then you started making money and then somebody said, let's now become a great place to work. So that was the agenda from day zero, and very happy with the association with Ujjivan. Disha.
Thanks, Prasenjit. So now this brings me to you, Sanjay. How do you feel about, being a great place to work certified organizations for now 11 years in a row? And How has the Great Place to Work assessment and the framework helped Ujjivan Bank shape its employee experience?
Okay, thanks, Jisha, for that question. But thank you, Prasenjit, for that interesting story and for your kind words about Ujjivan. Well, it's always a matter. It's always a sense of privilege and pride to be certified as a great place to work, and we've now done that for 10 years in a row. So 11 years in a row. Sorry, so that makes us Lorry plus one in some form of fashion. But importantly, it's the ability to recognize the fact that we continue to be we continue to serve our motto of employee first, and that is reflected in all the rankings that we've achieved over the years. So congratulations to all the Ujjivanites, for taking us to where we are today in this entire assessment. Now, our motto of employee first is very important to understand because we treat our employees the same level, with the same regard as that to a customer or any other stakeholder that we would have in the organization. And the objective is to be best for everyone that we serve. And so we consciously persevere that agenda of ensuring that we do the best for every every employee that we meet and every customer that we meet. So that reflects in particularly situations which are situation like the pandemic or the cyclones that we have. So any natural or unnatural sort of say disaster that happens, it comes to the foreground there, where not just it's not just the fact that people need help, but in the entire rallying around which happens at that point in time, which which reflects the true nature and the culture of this organization, which has always been about empathy and caring. And that has taken us a long way in this journey. And of course, our partnership with the Great Place to Work, because the survey gives us some really valuable insights, and we've we've derived a lot of value, a lot of immense value out of the insights that we've got. And times have changed, insights have changed, and if we had not taken those insights into account, maybe we would not have also kept in pace with whatever happens. And that sense of keeping pace also helped us to innovate, to meet the requirements of the business, meet the requirements of the employees, and to serve all our stakeholders much better. So, you know, kudos to Great Place to Work, kudos to all the employees of Ujjivan. You know, we continue to be a laureate and hope to do that for many more years to come. Thanks, Shisha.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sanjay. It is always inspiring to hear about how Ujjivan has built the wonderful culture that it has. But now the pandemic has changed our lives forever. We are having to rethink and reimagine almost everything that we do. We'd like to know from you, Prasenjit, how do you think, COVID has changed the ways in which organizations build, the high trust, high performance culture? How is the new workplace going to be like? And what are some of the major paradigm shifts that, you foresee in HR?
I would like to take that question in two parts. One is this is not the first time that we are seeing some major changes. Things have been changing and have changed in the past as well. Seldom does it happen in workplace culture that something disappears overnight. Like a Walkman, for example, comes and disappears overnight, or particular kind of camera disappears and digital technology comes. So if I were to look at how things have been changing, look at my generation, for example. And when we were growing up, we were used to the fact that jobs were less compared to the number of people who were there, and number of people were very less, but the jobs were lesser. So if you don't get into, you're not an engineer, you're not a doctor, you don't get into civil services, you didn't get into SBI probationary kind of exam, then you are educated unemployed. So the movies during our time used to show the heroes, whether it is Rajesh Khanna or Amitabh Bachchan, going from office to office with a sign that used to hang outside. That sign was called no vacancy, because you don't bother to go in and ask, there is no vacancy. So we are, in a sense, the no vacancy generation. And the market, therefore, for us was job security. So we wanted a good job, maybe preferably a government job, which gives us job security. And the currency was power, because when you don't have jobs, senior managers have a lot of power. So you work very hard and you get the power to maybe cancel Jisha's leave application, or or have a special canteen for senior executives. Those were the things that excited a lot of people in our generation. And so basically, I call ourselves as the no vacancy generation. Then, 91 liberalization, things change. Even those who didn't get into SBI probationary exam, civil services, doctor or engineer, went to an AppTech, went to an NIIT, and some of them are sitting in a penthouse in New York, in Cognizant or an organization like that. Whereas the more accomplished cousin who got into civil services is probably a district magistrate in some remote district, somewhere. So what changed? What changed was that demand supply changed. So suddenly, therefore, organizations like Great Place to Work and others came, and the the market became the market for employee experience, because you had hoardings all over Bangalore saying things like, they didn't say no vacancy, they would say things like, we are hiring, walk-in interview, all kinds of things, right? So that indicated that the supply and demand equation has changed. The power was now more with talent. And when that happens, experience becomes very important. So the market shifted from job security to employee experience. And the currency was not about power, because that generation didn't care so much about power. It was about career growth, because along with career, you also got other perquisites. Now, this was the beautiful story, and we had all the research. Ujjivan, was a master of that story. Great Place to Work knew everything about it, and that's when COVID happened. And that was the very interesting thing, because the market shifted again. And the market shifted because many people realized, by the way, for organizations like Ujjivan and others, the engagement didn't go down. It went up during COVID, because you were able to uh, not only deal with COVID, but also protect employees to a very large extent. Now, however, many people realized that the so-called job security that they were talking about, that may or may not be there when the chips are down. There have been organizations who have made losses, and they had to let go of employees, even though they had very high and large amount of money in reserves, right? And therefore, when change happens in this manner, you can't have career framework and 10-year planning for career growth. So therefore, career is also not something that you can promise the way you could when you had a far more stable kind of environment. So if the job security is out, if career is out, the only thing that remains is, how can I be relevant? So today, if you ask me, my take is that the market is not even for employee experience, it is a market for relevance. And the currency in this market is learning, or more precisely, learning ability. So organizations who are able to create opportunities for people to learn and grow, these are the organizations who will attract talent, because in my opinion, and the example that comes to my mind is, and I will not name the company for obvious reasons. It's a very well-known brand globally, and uh, I have a very good sort of friend whose son is working in this organization in US. So, uh, so I was asking that person. I said, "This is not a great place to work in terms of employee experience. Why are you working here?" And he replied, he said, "It is a great place to be from." So I said, "What do you mean?" He means that in 3 years' time, the kind of experience I get and the market value that I add, very few other organizations will give. So therefore, you will find that you will be able to attract people more if you go and tell them now that we can't promise the future and how it will be like, but we will give you the opportunity to stay relevant. I call this generation the startup generation. Jisha.
Thanks, Prasenjit. That was a lot of interesting insights, from no vacancy generation to open to hire and now startup generation. So that brings me to you, Sanjay.
Mhm.
How did Ujjivan handle pandemic, and what are Ujjivan's future plans like?
Well, first of all, it was most unexpected. Like Prasenjit already said, you had no idea because we were all preparing to do our regular stuff, and we had digital plans and all of that. Uh, but when it hit so suddenly. The first and foremost thing that we did was to say that let's form what we called a quick response team. I was fortunate to be part of that quick response team. First agenda of the quick response team was to give assurance to our employees that they are safe. So the first message that went out to the employees was one, that no jobs will be cut. Number two, no salaries will be cut. In fact, the top 100 people in the company took a salary cut themselves voluntarily, and but everybody else, no salary cut, no job cut. So which gave a lot of peace of mind to the employees. Second, we said that no, this is such an unknown thing. God knows how it's going to impact people in which form or fashion. So let's shore up the grants and shore up the insurance that we do for our employees, because when they need hospitalization, etc., don't know what the spend is going to be like. So, we shored up all our insurance policies for the employees on that one. We also created certain grants from our welfare trust so that the employees could be taken care of if any challenges did happen with them. And, we actually, these grants are contributions that are made by employees. So, in fact, when we took a salary cut, the top 100 people took a salary cut, it was not to save expenses of the company, but it was to put money into the grant so that that money could be given to employees who were in need because of the pandemic and impacted by the COVID. Then the next thing that we did was that we've got to have connectedness, and connection is extremely important times, but particularly when we are such a touchy feely organization. We go out there, we are meeting employees all the time. So we created this entire new concept of something called a virtual branch visit. In fact, we christened it VBV, where you every evening between 5 to 6 p.m. we met with a set of branches, by which through the year we've connected with all our 575 branches, where they met with leaders of in the head office, in the regional office. Every branch was visited by Ujjivan. In fact, I know Nitin visited 162 branches himself virtually, which is the most that any CEO, I was checking with various other companies, it's one of the most that any CEO has done, by surely going and talking to the people at the ground, and they getting visibility of the CEO. But most important was the way people got together and pulled forces together whenever anybody was unwell. And you know people would just rally around and say that, hey, I can get you food, I can get you help, don't worry, you're not alone, your family's not alone. It was brilliant. And it just, that whole personal connection was something that went all the way. So I know Nitin called, a number of these guys personally, just picked up the phone, just get me the number, picked up the phone, boom, called the employee. I picked up a whole lot of numbers, called the employee, and said that, look, we are behind you. You will all be okay. You will get well. And that really helped to convey a message which cascaded all the way down, saying that wow, there are leaders, and it's not just Nitin and me. There was a whole bunch of other leaders who did the same thing. That the leaders are behind us, and they actually reached out to us. That was an important message to lift the morale of the company. In addition to that, we said that we have to have these guys employed in some form or fashion. It can't be They just can't be sitting at home. So the every employee, we connected with our 5 million customers 1.5 times. In a period of 3 to 4 months, where every customer was called, and it was an agenda-less call where they were talked to and they were told that, hey, how will how are you managing? Is everything okay? When the moratorium bit was announced by the RBI, we brought in the moratorium bit. But essentially, the message was, we care for you. Are you aware of the pandemic? This is how we can help you. This is what we are doing for you. Similarly, the entire HR team got together and called all the 17,000 employees. And we called them 5 times, 5x during that 4 to 5 month period. Every employee was called to assure them that, we are behind you. Again, we've done a lot of good things for you. So don't worry, you're okay, you're doing fine. And as things open up, do your best, because the company needs you there, and the company stood behind you. Now it's for you to pay back the company in many ways. So you know a lot of interesting stuff that happened in the company at that point in time. Of course, what it set for itself was that things will never be the same again. So what some of the things that it did tell us was that virtual is a reality. Okay. And that's something that we have to deal with. Number two, engagement with the employee is absolutely critical. You know, uh, there you said that you will physically engage, and you took it for granted, and you landed up, physically. But here you can't do that. So landing up virtually is extremely important. Number three, stay in touch always. Right across. Number four, sensitivity. Because now, earlier you were meeting people in office or you were meeting them in the field. Now you're meeting them in their homes. Employees come with different hues and colors. Every employee does not have the privilege that you and I have. They come from smaller homes. They may have families out there. So let not, peripheral noise disturb you in any way, and never let an employee feel anyway less because they don't have the privileges that you and I have. So those were some of the findings, some of the things, insights that we got out of it. But connectedness was the big thing. Jisha.
Thanks, Sanjay. So that brings me to my last question, and this question is to both of you.
Mhm.
So, what is your suggestion or your advice to the leaders, HR, and employees on enhancing engagement in this post-COVID era to come? And we'll start with Prasenjit.
Thank you. Uh, I think by and large, what you heard Sanjay say is exactly what good leaders, effective leaders have been doing, because one thing is sure, that people may not remember your predecessor. If you are the leader today, they may not remember your successor, but they will never forget you. So whether you did the right thing or you could not do the right thing, your people are going to remember you, because they're going to say, so and so was my leader when COVID-19 came, and first wave and then second wave, and who knows what is in store. Now, that being the case, the leaders of the best workplaces are actually uh, showing the way. We actually we researched hundreds of organizations in a project that we just concluded called Leadership in Times of Crisis. And we found that a lot of these leaders who are very well known for their passion, some of them are very aggressive. I think the big difference that we found in the last 1 year in these leaders is that they have always been people with great passion, but now they are role models in compassion. So therefore, passion is supplemented by a lot of compassion. You talked about empathy and care as a part of your DNA. I think what I have also seen leaders do over the last 1 year and very successfully, and people have responded in terms of the discretionary effort that went into getting business back. And for many companies, businesses came back very strongly in the fourth quarter, and many of them have not reduced their budgets in spite of the second wave. And that is leaders are judging less, they're helping more. So smart leaders who used to be very analytical, and this pandemic has taught them to judge less, help more. And I think that is the essence of leadership in many ways, according to me. And when it comes to other people, I can also talk about HR and individuals. Jisha, should I talk about what I think HR is doing and what individuals should be doing?
Yes, yes. What HR and individual employees, what's the advice for them too?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think one of the big challenge of HR has been helped by COVID. Before COVID in Bangalore, in one company, in a town hall, 1,000 employees are seated, and they called me to speak for a few minutes. So I asked a question. My first question was, how many of you have spent 5,000 rupees last month on entertainment or going out to eat, something of that nature? Now, 99% of the hands went up. Everybody had spent 5,000 or more than 5,000 on going out, either for entertainment or to a restaurant. The next question that I asked was, how many of you spent last month 5,000 rupees or more from your pocket for your self-development? And barely 10-15 hands went up. Now you could see that this was one of the best workplaces, and the mindset was that I will do my best. I'll do what the organization tells me to do, but the organization will take care of my career and my competency. And once they tell me, I'm going to master it. COVID has told us that that curriculum is now not there anymore. Previously, young people coming from colleges would treat organizations as an extension of college. And organizations figured out that what these people need, they need three things. You have to give them a curriculum. That means you know whatever job you do, you make it you train them. You need to therefore give them a professor. So therefore, whether it was the trainer or whether it was the supervisor, he was expected to be the professor because he has to explain the curriculum. And the third is you have to give them a report card, which they can show to their parents and to others saying that I have got first class first or distinction marks or whatever. Everybody got used to that. For the first time, we realized that many things are not in the curriculum. I mean, this virus was not in the curriculum of our business, right? Who in which business school? I remember one of the world's foremost business schools immediately after COVID-19 in the month of March, how to tackle COVID. What was the case study? Case study was an accident that happened in a mine because nobody could figure out that a virus is going to create this kind of a disruption, not in one country, not in two countries, but globally. So I think from an HR's point of view, how can employees, have relevance, not just engagement? And the good news is we have a company called Great Manager Institute. the number of managers on their own who are coming to their platform to do their e-learning course and get certified has gone up exponentially. Now, when I say exponentially, it is still 50% who are, you know, consistently going and completing the course, but that was 5% before COVID. So therefore, you can see that many more employees today are open to learning, and that is what HR has to facilitate. I think that is number one. Uh, the second thing that HR has to do is they cannot take care of the dispersed employees that you talked about. You know that 17,000 employees, five phone calls. That's not good enough. Each of those 17,000 employees, they have a manager. Maybe the manager has 5, 10, 15 people under him or her. So developing this line manager to deliver that employee experience. And by the way, employee experience is no longer just about what you used to do in the past. Uh, Wellness has now become an important part of it. In the past, the mental health and well-being of my employee was often not my business. You either go to a doctor or you go to somebody else. Today, managers have to treat psychological and emotional health the same way they treat physical health. When your frontline staff is going for collection in a remote location, you are worried about his or her safety. And that's the way we have to look at psychological safety, because the percentage of employees who are now going through depression, anxiety is at an all-time high. And I think that is the second thing that HR has to figure out. How do you equip your line managers? And the last piece for HR is real-time feedback. You can't do an employee survey once a year to understand what your people are saying. As I speak to you now on my dashboard, which you can't see, but I can, I have the engagement level of my people at 630. Now it is possible, everybody has to give only one response to one statement. The biggest change, however, continues to be, or in this case, it will be from the employee. Because how can you move an employee from passive to active mindset if your employee surveys are only asking what management is doing and what manager is doing? My manager makes expectations clear is the statement in the employee survey. Why not have a statement that says, I take reasonable efforts to make expectations clear with my manager? We have realized that engagement, the way we used to measure it, is only 50% of the equation. You can never have 100% engagement with an individual who is unwilling to go half the way himself. And therefore, I think our measurements will now have to look at both what the manager is doing or management is doing, but also I as a individual. What is it that I am doing to be engaged? And the last piece, sorry, I'm taking a little bit of time. The last piece that we discovered is that whereas the previous generation, had a sense of entitlement. The people who will be successful without depression, without anxiety, without panic attacks in post-COVID will have a sense of gratitude. And the single biggest differentiator of your effectiveness and your mental well-being is, do you have a sense of gratitude or you have a sense of entitlement? Jisha?
Thank you so much. That, I guess, is a lot of great advice for many organizations, who would be watching. Now, Sanjay, the same question to you. What do you think? What is your advice and your suggestions?
Okay, I mean, I believe that, and this is belief which is having spoken to lots of people. Uh, I believe that there are, at a leadership level, like I said earlier, I think connectedness is extremely important, and connectedness just doesn't mean employee connectedness. I think you need to get the entire employees ecosystem connected with the organization. And Jisha, we had done, after this entire COVID happened, and a lot of people, a lot of our people were going into the branches when everybody else was sitting at home under lockdown. We actually sent out a very nice thank you note to the parents or to the brothers, siblings of the employees, to the wife of the employee, saying thank you very much for supporting, you know, your your son, your husband, your brother, your sister to come to the office every day. And he's been such a hero, or she has been such a hero for us, during these really troubled and tough times. So that connectedness is going to go beyond just the employee, because you employee is not coming in and meeting people every day as they used to. Of course, I think that'll come back. I don't think that entire remote working will continue as it did, because lockdown will not continue, thankfully. Nevertheless, I think that the enveloping the total ecosystem of the employee is going to be an important aspect of what what we do going forward. Secondly, of course, one can't say it any much more or any more that the whole digital aspect and using the mobile aspect is becoming very, very critical. It's not about policing, but it's about being there, you know, and leaderships will be measured by being there, you know, in what we call a remote world. And so companies, leaders have to figure out how are they going to be there when required, because you know you may not be able to get to a particular place physically. Again, it has a lot of physical connotation to it, but also mentally you have to be involved with whatever's going on. And with a virtual interface, your ability to be there is so much easier virtually. Yeah. So you better make yourself present there when you're required virtually. And from an HR perspective, the way I look at it is, one, very clearly, create engagements and interactions which are going to become so much easier. And again, it's a digital play. It has to be a digital play. People are more and more addicted with digital technology. So engagement has to be driven through what we like to call an HRMS system. But I don't think, I don't like to call it a human resource management system, but I like to call it a human interaction system. Sorry, it sounds too male a term as HIS, but I'll probably figure out something which says her as well. But it's a human interaction system which has to be, more, if I could choose the word, humanified, as opposed to being just digital, so to say. And how do we create those engagements, which we are working on in very different ways to applaud, reward employees digitally and keep that engagement going, get people to really vote for rewarding an employee, as opposed to saying that, hey, this one is good. And it's not just about, hey, you're a top performer, etc., but more behavioral aspects of it. How do we do that? Second is, use that digital technology to manage stuff at the back. So digital is not just about the front, but how do we manage the middle and the back? So that becomes a critical aspect, and look at it on how we can disrupt what we are doing, what we believe we're doing well, and figure out, how can we do it differently and better. The next thing is, of course, this whole hybrid model. We better get used to it. While we've talked about the fact that there is remote and there is physical, now there is a concept of where people must be in office. Then there'll be another set who don't have to be. who can work remotely, and third will be hybrid. Now, those are models that we've never worked with before. We've started grappling with it now, and people are trying to understand how those models work, but we have to make them work. It's no more a question of how do we ensure that is there a policy for work from home? No, that has to be here. The policy has to be here. It has to come out of here. It has to come out of here. Yeah, and therefore what this has done is it's actually speeded up a lot of things we probably would have done 5, 10 years later. It's brought to the fore. And so when you look at it, you look at it by you segment your employees. And when I, by way of example, if I could say that when you talk about young mothers who have little children at home, creche facilities are not there, then you have to give that person the ability to be able to work and contribute because they are fantastic contributors, you know, to contribute to the organization while being able to take care of the child at home because they not necessarily may have all the support systems at home to be able to take care of the child. You can't leave the child home and come to work and say that hey, life is normal. It's not going to be. So that's just by way of a small example. On the other hand, we have a lot of young single employees who don't want to stay at home. They want to come to office because for them it's a social activity. Also, I mean, they come to work, but they also socialize in office. So there are different segments of customers, and you can't treat everybody as one, saying everybody comes into office or everybody goes away from office. You have to address these needs of the of these individuals. Much like you mentioned earlier that people feel that it's an entitled generation. Well, entitled generation, if it is, it is. That's reality. Now, as HR, we have to deal with it. And the best way to deal with it is to be able to understand what their needs are and to be able to cater to that needs, much like you would do with a customer, you have to do it with the employee.
Mhm.
And for the individual, I would completely agree with you. This is, learning is going to be a vital piece. From an organization perspective, how can you make learning accessible? Okay, which is going to be an important aspect. But today, the world can be had so well, and you can be anywhere. You could be sitting in Patna, and you could be attending courses in Harvard. So there are no constraints. It's limitless learning at the moment. And how do we make that limitless learning easier is from an organization's perspective, individual's perspective, is obviously to be able to take advantage of that and grow themselves more. In fact, in Ujjivan, what we've done is we've got a new learning management system. We have every bit that we used to do, whether we were doing it remote or we were doing it through instructor-led training, we've converted it completely as self-paced. There are fewer models which are instructor-led. We are now gamifying the whole thing so that it becomes interesting for the employees to, learn from that, and some motivation, some impulse for them to learn from these things. So, it's a combo of all of these things, which I guess will work well for all of them. So there we go. Jisha,
Brilliant.
all yours.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we are definitely gonna witness a lot of changes in the way organizations are gonna better the employee experience. See, so that brings us to the end of this session. It was a wonderful and interesting session with both of you, and we are incredibly excited for the award night that's coming in. And thank you so much for taking out time for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jisha. Thanks, Prasenjit.
Thank you for inviting.
Thank you for being there. That was lovely. And it's always a pleasure to hear you and your insights, and particularly your stories and how you build them into real life applications. So thank you very much for that, and have a good evening, and good luck, and look forward
You
to the
too.
awards night.
Look forward and thank you for inviting me. All the best. Take care.
Thank you.